My mother-in-law told my husband I wasn't good enough for him and suggested he should leave me. I simply smiled and walked away, leaving her in the dark, unaware that everything she had been scheming for had already slipped through her fingers. By the time she realized her mistake, it was far too late. The moment she decided to destroy her son's life, it arrived wrapped in pearls and accompanied by a glass of expensive champagne. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, and I was clearing the table after a lovely family brunch when she leaned in. Her voice, smooth and practiced, carried a false sweetness as she whispered, "Rebecca, dear, let's not drag this on. You need to leave my son." My hands froze in place, the silverware suddenly feeling heavier than before. Across the room, Ethan laughed at something his father said, completely oblivious to the bombshell his mother had just dropped in our kitchen. "You've had your fun," she continued, her voice steady as she adjusted the diamond bracelet on her wrist, as if this was just a casual conversation. "But you must realize, don't you? You don't belong in our family. You're not good enough." Her words weren't new to me. I had heard the jabs about my upbringing before, the sly insults about my supposed lack of refinement, the way she always introduced me as Rebecca, Ethan's wife, reducing me to a mere title, never acknowledging me as an individual. But today, there were no more hidden slights. Today, she was making her move. "You don't have the right background," she pushed. "No prestigious family name, no valuable connections. A woman like you is only holding Ethan back." I took a slow, deliberate breath, carefully placing the plates down with a controlled precision. She misinterpreted my silence, assuming it was an indication of submission. "Don't look so surprised, dear," she continued, the condescending smile curling her lips. "Ethan will find someone better, someone who fits our world, someone with the right family, the right social standing. You understand, don't you?" Ah, so that was her plan. This wasn't just a slight. It was a direct ultimatum. Dorothy had decided my time in her son's life was over. She fully expected me to crumble under the pressure, to pack my bags and leave quietly while she picked out a new, suitable wife for him. I smiled, not the smile of a woman who had been defeated, but the kind of smile that should have made her uneasy. "I understand perfectly." And with that, without uttering another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, confused by my complete lack of resistance. She had no clue, that the house she admired so much, the one with marble countertops and windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, wasn't Ethan's. She had no idea that the business she'd always belittled, dismissing it as my little project, had grown far beyond Ethan's entire career. She was completely unaware that the wealth she enjoyed, luxury vacations, extravagant gifts, didn't come from their family's resources, but from the empire I had created from scratch. She thought she'd won. Little did she know, she had already lost. That night, I didn't tell Ethan about his mother's little suggestion. I didn't need to, because while she was busy plotting my removal, she had no idea that she was standing in a house that wasn't hers. The mansion she adored showing off to her friends, the one she believed was Ethan's great achievement, was mine. I had purchased it before we even got married, in my name, with my money. I had allowed Ethan to take the credit, letting his mother believe he had provided this life for us, but the reality was his paycheck barely covered the property taxes. It was all mine. And the moment she decided I was disposable, she sealed her own fate. Over the next few weeks, my mother-in-law's tactics grew bolder. She dropped subtle hints to Ethan, cloaked in faux concern. "Rebecca just doesn't understand our lifestyle, sweetheart. Wouldn't you be happier with someone who truly fits in? It's not her fault. She was raised differently. But let's be realistic here." I watched as Ethan, ever the oblivious one, laughed off her comments, unaware of the brewing storm beneath the surface. Then came the final push. One evening, I overheard a quiet conversation between Ethan and his mother in the next room. "She's not right for you," she urged. "You've done enough for her. It's time to move on." Then, the offer. "If you divorce her now, I'll make sure you walk away with everything." I nearly laughed out loud. She honestly thought she had power over me. She had no idea. That night, as I lay beside my husband, the man who had unwittingly allowed his mother to wage war on our marriage, I realized something. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was simply entertained, because the truth was, They had already lost. They just hadn't figured it out yet. The first crack in Ethan's picture-perfect world came the next morning at breakfast. I sat across from him, sipping my coffee, while he scrolled through his phone with his usual distracted ease. He had no clue what his mother had set in motion the night before, no idea that the battle had already begun. "You're quiet today," he remarked, glancing up from his screen. "Everything okay?" I smiled. "Everything's perfect." And it was, because I had made my decision. I wasn't going to beg for my marriage. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't even going to fight. I was going to let them think they had won, because what's more satisfying than defeating your enemy by allowing them to dig their own grave? By mid-afternoon, the first text arrived. It was from my mother-in-law. "Ethan and I had a lovely lunch today. He agrees. It's time to move forward." Time to move forward? Ah, she thought she was already in control. I took a sip of wine, letting the message sit unanswered for a while, knowing it would make her feel overconfident. 2 hours later, another message came in. "I hope you understand, Rebecca. This is what's best for everyone." I couldn't help but chuckle. Best for everyone? No, Dorothy, it's only best for you. But I played along, of course. I quickly texted back. I understand perfectly. I could practically picture her, champagne flute trembling in her hand, barely able to contain her delight. I imagined her already calling her friends, boasting about how effortlessly she had removed me from her son's life. The image of her gloating was almost too vivid to ignore. She took it so well. She knows her place now. Finally, Ethan can be with someone who truly fits into our family. Oh, Dorothy. She really had no clue. That evening, Ethan came home later than usual, and I could tell by his hesitation at the door that he was struggling with his words. Good. He was feeling guilty already. "Hey, babe," he started, his voice soft. "Can we talk?" Here it was. "Of course," I replied. "Sure," sitting down on the couch. He sat next to me, his usual nervous tic kicking in as he rubbed his hands together. Predictable, as always. I think we should separate," he finally muttered, as if rehearsing his words. I tilted my head, feigning confusion, as if I were truly processing his words. "Oh, it's just that we want different things," he stammered, relying on the same tired lines that every cheater, liar, and coward had used before. "Who's we?" I asked, just for fun. A flicker of discomfort flashed across his face. He wasn't used to me being this calm. He probably expected tears, anger, or some kind of outburst, but all I did was smile. "If that's what you want, Ethan," I said smoothly. He blinked. "Wait, you're not upset?" "Why would I be?" I asked, standing up. "Should I be?" I could see his confusion deepening. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. "You don't want to fight for our marriage?" I walked toward our bedroom, casually grabbing a suitcase and placing it on the bed. "I'll give you some space," I said calmly. "I'll stay somewhere else for a while." The look on his face was priceless. "Rebecca, wait! I don't mean you have to leave tonight, I just meant—" But I was already packing. Let him think I was hurt. Let him think I was devastated. Let him believe he was the one in control. Little did he know I was leaving. But I wasn't leaving in the way he imagined. I was leaving him in the exact position his mother had wanted, completely free. But that freedom was going to cost him everything. That night, I stayed at a luxury hotel, the same one my mother-in-law had bragged about hosting charity events in. The irony was almost poetic. I took my time, ordering champagne, sitting by the window overlooking the city skyline, enjoying the quiet. Tomorrow, Dorothy would wake up thinking she had won. Ethan would think he was moving forward, unburdened by me. But by the time they realized what they had lost, it would already be too late. Dorothy, no doubt, woke up feeling victorious. I could almost picture her, sipping her morning coffee in that sunlit dining room, basking in the glow of her success. She had done it. She had erased me. The woman she believed was unworthy of her precious son was gone. In her mind, the next phase had already begun. She would find Ethan a new wife, someone who came from the right background, someone she could mold, control, and own. And as for me, I was supposed to be broken, miserable, a cautionary tale of what happens to women who forget their place. I smiled at the thought. She had no idea. no idea that while she basked in her so-called victory, her world was about to crumble. That morning, Ethan learned his first hard lesson. Around 10 a.m., I received a text from him. "Rebecca, we need to talk. Something's wrong with the house." I didn't respond. By noon, my phone buzzed again. "Why is the bank saying my name isn't on the mortgage? Call me." There it was. Less than 24 hours, and he had realized what he had truly lost. But I wasn't done yet. I let the messages pile up, his confusion turning into frustration, then panic. At 3 p.m., my lawyer sent me a simple text. He called. "He's realizing the truth. Let me know when you want to respond." Not yet. Let him stew. It wasn't until the following evening that Dorothy herself became aware of the disaster. I was in my hotel room, enjoying a quiet dinner, when my lawyer forwarded me another message. "Dorothy just called. She's furious. She claims there's been a mistake." I could almost hear her shrill voice. "What do you mean my son's name isn't on the house?" She must have insisted it was some kind of oversight, a paperwork error. After all, in her mind, everything Ethan had must belong to him, except it didn't. Not the house, not the investments, not even the business she had so often mocked. I took another sip of wine, feeling the satisfaction settle in. She was about to learn that the real mistake was underestimating me. By the time Ethan and his mother demanded answers, I was ready. I met them at the house, the one Dorothy had once proudly called their family estate. Ethan was already waiting in the driveway, arms crossed, pacing back and forth. Dorothy stood beside him, her carefully crafted composure starting to crack. "Rebecca," Ethan said, "we need to talk." "Do we?" I replied, stepping out of the car with deliberate, unhurried ease. "Yes," his mother snapped. "There's been a mistake. The bank is saying this house is in your name." "That's not a mistake," I answered smoothly. Silence. Dorothy blinked, clearly struggling to comprehend the words she was hearing. "But that doesn't make sense," Ethan said, a touch of desperation creeping into his voice. "I thought—" "You thought what?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "That you owned this house?" Ethan's face went pale. "This house was never yours," I finished, my voice calm and steady. Dorothy's face drained of color. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, that's not possible." I looked at her, unfazed. "That's reality." "I finished for her," I said quietly. Ethan stared at me, shaking his head, clearly struggling with what to say next. "But we lived here together, and I let you—" I interrupted him, speaking plainly. "I did," I replied, calm and unbothered. A brief silence followed, and then Dorothy did what she always did when things didn't go her way. She exploded. "This is ridiculous," she spat, her voice rising in fury. "You're nothing without my son. You had nothing before him." "I had everything before him," I corrected her, my voice steady and unwavering. "And I still do." Ethan exhaled sharply, his hand running through his hair, a sign of growing realization that this was bigger than just the house. "Rebecca," he said, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Let's talk this through. Maybe we can work something out." I smiled, but it was not a smile of comfort. "Oh, Ethan," I said lightly, "we already did. That's why you signed a prenup." Dorothy gasped audibly. Ethan froze completely, and in that moment, I watched as the pieces of their world shattered. I began to turn away, but not before I dropped the final truth. "You wanted to be free of me?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted." With that, I walked away, leaving them standing on my property, realizing far too late that they had bet everything and lost. Dorothy stood frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Ethan, on the other hand, looked as though he had seen a ghost. His face was pale, his mouth slightly agape, as though he couldn't grasp the words I had just spoken. "Rebecca, we can fix this," he finally said, his voice laced with desperation. I almost laughed in disbelief. "Fix what?" I asked, a mock smile playing at my lips. "Your mother's scheme? The way you just went along with it? Or how you thought you could walk away and keep everything I built?" Dorothy stepped forward, her anger flaring as she practically seethed. "You tricked him!" she hissed. "You manipulated my son into signing that prenup!" I tilted my head, letting her words settle in the air. "Tricked?" I repeated. "You mean the prenup that Ethan signed willingly? The one that protects my business, my assets, and my property?" Ethan opened his mouth as if to defend himself, but I raised a hand to stop him. "Tell me, Ethan," I said, my tone cold and direct. "Did you even bother to read it? Or did you just assume, like your mother, that none of this would matter?" The silence that followed told me all I needed to know. Dorothy's breath was rapid and shallow now. She wasn't just angry, she was panicking. "This is wrong," she spat. "You're being spiteful. You're tearing this family apart out of pure pettiness." "Am I?" I asked, my voice smooth as glass. "Or are you just angry that the game you started didn't end the way you planned?" Dorothy's face turned a deep, furious red. "You were never good enough for this family," she shouted. I took a step forward, meeting her glare without flinching. "And yet," I said softly, "it's still my name on the deed." The air between us crackled, thick with tension. For the first time in her life, Dorothy realized she was powerless, and she knew it. I turned to walk away, but Ethan grabbed my wrist, his grip tight but desperate. "Rebecca, please," he begged. I paused, looking down at his hand. A year ago, that touch would have meant something. But now? Now, it was nothing more than the last grasp of a drowning man. "You don't have to do this," he said, his voice strained. I made a mistake, okay? I let my mom get in my head, but we can fix this." I studied him for a long moment, taking in the man I had once loved, the man I had built a life with. But the man before me was a stranger, or maybe he had always been one. "You don't get to play the victim now, Ethan," I said, my voice firm, my tone controlled. "Not after everything. Not after you chose her over me." Ethan swallowed, his face a mask of shame. "I was an idiot," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "Yes," I agreed coldly. "You were." He flinched at my bluntness. Dorothy let out an offended noise, as if she couldn't believe I was speaking to her son that way. I ignored her. "You and your mother wanted me gone," I continued, my words slicing through the tension. "And I gave you exactly what you asked for. So tell me, Ethan, why aren't you happy?" He averted his gaze, shame pooling on his features. I didn't need to hear the answer. I already knew it. "You think this is over?" Dorothy hissed, her face twisted with anger. I turned to her with calm finality. "It is over," I said simply. "You just don't want to accept it." "This house was supposed to be Ethan's," she cried, her voice rising in disbelief. "But it never was," I countered smoothly. "And neither was anything else you thought you were entitled to." Dorothy trembled now, visibly unraveling. She had spent years believing she was untouchable, that she could manipulate and control everyone around her. But standing in the driveway of a house that wasn't hers, she finally realized the truth. She had lost. Worse still, she had never been in control to begin with. I didn't stay to listen to Dorothy's last desperate attempts to salvage her dignity. I didn't care anymore. As I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't in months. Relief. I wasn't just walking away from Ethan. I wasn't just walking away from Dorothy. I was walking away from all of it. From the quiet belittling, from the constant manipulation, from the endless battle to prove myself to people who had never been worthy of my time or energy. I was free. And they? They were trapped, Ethan, stuck with the consequences of his choices. Dorothy, powerless in the empire she had always tried to steal. And me? I was just getting started. Dorothy wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. 2 days after I walked away from her and Ethan, I received a message. Not from Ethan, but from her. "You may have the house, but don't think for a second that you've won. My son will recover. He will find someone better. Someone who actually belongs in this family. Enjoy your lonely little empire while it lasts." I smiled as I read her message. Oh, Dorothy, still clinging to the illusion of control. She still thought Ethan had something to recover from, still thought I had lost. She was about to learn the truth the hard way. I ignored Dorothy's message. I had no reason to respond. But life, it seems, has a funny way of delivering karma all on its own. A week later, a mutual friend, one of the few who had managed to stay neutral through it all, reached out to me. "You won't believe what's happening," they said. I sipped my coffee, amused. "Try me." Ethan lost his job. That caught my attention. "How?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Apparently Dorothy went to his boss," they explained. "She tried to get him a promotion, claiming he deserved it after everything." I almost choked on my drink. "Of course she did," I muttered, shaking my head. Dorothy wasn't just overbearing, she was delusional. She had spent years thinking Ethan was entitled to success, that his name alone should carry weight. But in the corporate world, arrogance doesn't get you very far. "What did his boss do?" I asked, already knowing it wouldn't end well. "Not only did they not promote him, but HR started looking into his performance," my friend continued. "Turns out, he was already under review for underperforming, and when Dorothy stormed into the office, making a scene, they fired him." I exhaled slowly. Ethan had lost his home. Ethan had lost his security. And now, he had lost his job. Not because of me, because of her. Dorothy had spent years shielding him from the consequences of his actions, making excuses, smoothing over every failure. But now, she had destroyed him, and I wasn't even finished watching it all fall apart. The next call came 2 days later. This time, it was from Ethan. I let it ring. I wasn't interested. Then a text came through. "Rebecca, please, can we talk?" I stared at the message, weighing my options. I didn't owe him anything, neither my time nor my pity. But curiosity won out, so I answered. "Ethan?" His voice cracked with relief. "Rebecca, I messed up. I know that. I don't know what to do anymore." I leaned back, letting the silence stretch between us. "What do you want me to say, Ethan?" I asked, my voice calm but distant. I didn't think this would happen," he admitted, his voice faltering. "I thought—" He hesitated. "You thought your mother was right," I finished for him. There was a long pause before he whispered, "Yeah." And there it was. For the first time, Ethan was admitting that he had placed his mother's opinions above everything else, above logic, above reality, above me. And where had that gotten him? Nowhere. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said weakly. "But you did," I replied, the words sharp and final. Another silence passed. "Can we meet?" he asked, his voice full of desperation. I closed my eyes. There it was, the last desperate attempt to pull me back. But the truth was, he didn't want me. He wanted security. He wanted the life he had thrown away. And I wasn't in the business of saving men from their own arrogance. "No, Ethan," I said firmly. "We have nothing left to talk about." For the first time, I heard real panic in his voice. "Rebecca, wait." "Goodbye, Ethan." I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, but Dorothy? She wasn't done embarrassing herself just yet. 2 days later, she stormed into my office, pushing past my receptionist with all the grace of a hurricane. She barged into my private office like she still held authority over my life. "This is your fault," she spat, slamming her hands down on my desk. I stayed seated, calm, unbothered. "What exactly is my fault?" I asked coolly. "You ruined my son's life," she shouted. "You took everything from him, the house, the security." "No, Dorothy," I interrupted. "I didn't take anything. Ethan gave it all away." She blinked, clearly thrown off by my response. "Excuse me?" I leaned forward, my voice even and controlled. "Ethan chose to listen to you. He chose to believe I was disposable. He chose to walk away." I let the words sink in. "But tell me something, Dorothy," I continued. "When you told him to leave me, when you promised him something better, did you ever stop to think, what if you were wrong?" Her face drained of color. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off softly. "No, you didn't." I stood up slowly, my eyes locked on hers. "And now you have to live with it." Dorothy opened her mouth, but no words came out. Deep down, she knew the truth. I had never been the problem. She had. She had built Ethan into a man who couldn't stand on his own. She had raised him to believe that entitlement was strength, and in the end, it was her own arrogance that had destroyed him. Dorothy stumbled backward, suddenly looking much, much older. "Get out of my office," I said calmly, my voice carrying the finality of the moment. She hesitated, one last moment of defiance flashing in her eyes, but in the end, she had no power left. So, she left. As the door clicked shut behind her, I let out a slow, satisfied breath. The storm was over, and I was still standing. Dorothy never contacted me again after that day. Neither did Ethan. The silence was deafening, but it was the best kind of silence. The kind that signified freedom. No more manipulation. No more second-guessing myself. No more fighting for a place in a family that never deserved me. I had won. But more importantly, I had grown. The first morning I truly felt free. I woke up to the sound of nothing. No tension in the air. No forced conversations. No passive-aggressive texts. Just peace. And yet, the world kept moving. My business was thriving. My team was expanding. My confidence? Unshakable. Funny, isn't it? Dorothy had spent years trying to convince me I wasn't enough, that without Ethan, I would fall apart, that my success was somehow tied to him. But now? While she and her son scrambled to pick up the pieces of their mess, I was too busy building something greater. Months passed, and the whispers of Ethan's downfall never truly stopped. He had tried to rebuild, tried to prove he could rise above it all. But without me? He struggled. The job market didn't care that Ethan was Dorothy's son. The women he pursued weren't interested in a man who had lost everything. And as for Dorothy, her reputation for meddling had turned her into someone no one wanted to associate with. A week later, a former colleague of his dropped by my boutique. "You dodged a bullet," she said, her voice a mix of pity and incredulity. "Ethan's well. Let's just say he's not doing well." I didn't bother asking for the details. I didn't need to. I already knew the truth. Ethan had been handed everything on a silver platter, and he had thrown it all away. Meanwhile, I had built something from scratch, and I wasn't finished yet. On the 1-year anniversary of my new life, I hosted a small gathering at my flagship boutique. Not to revel in revenge, not to gloat, but to celebrate how far I had come. For too long, I had been fighting to prove myself to people who never truly saw me. Now, I was finally seeing myself. No more shrinking. No more waiting for validation. No more fighting for a love that was never real. Surrounded by strong, independent women, women who supported me and understood me, was the first time I truly felt at home. That's when I saw her, Samantha. The young woman Dorothy had once paraded as Ethan's better match. She stood near the entrance, hesitant, almost ashamed. I raised an eyebrow, but before I could say anything, she spoke. "I owe you an apology," she said softly, her voice laced with sincerity. I leaned against the counter, studying her. "Go on," I said, my curiosity piqued. "I believed I was the right one for Ethan," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "That you were the one who didn't belong. But after seeing what happened to him, I realized it could have easily been me." Her words hung in the air. Dorothy had wanted me gone because she thought I was beneath them. Now, the very women she deemed better were seeing the truth for themselves. "You're lucky," I said, my voice calm but piercing. "You got out before it was too late." Samantha nodded, a sigh escaping her lips. "I've heard about your success. I wanted to see it with my own eyes." I gestured around the boutique, a reflection of everything I had built. The empire, the legacy. "Well," I said with a smirk, "welcome to the little shop Dorothy tried to destroy." She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "She really underestimated you," she said. "A lot of people did," I replied, my words dripping with quiet confidence. As the night wound down, I stepped outside and gazed up at the city skyline. It was the same skyline I had stared at the night Ethan left me. Back then, I was preparing for a fight. But now? I had already won. Not because I had exacted revenge, not because I had watched them crumble, but because I had taken my life back. Dorothy had wanted me erased. Instead, I had blossomed. Ethan had thought he was moving on, but I had moved forward. And the best part? I hadn't done any of it for them. I had done it for myself. Dorothy once told me I wasn't good enough for her family. In the end, she was right. I wasn't good enough for them. I was better.